You may begin.
Okay. I believe 5, 6. We have quorum.
1, 2, 3.
Excellent. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March edition of the Brooklyn Community Board 2 Health, Environment, and Social Services Committee meeting. This meeting is being recorded, and there's a couple brief announcements that I will make before we initially start introducing ourselves and commencing with the rest of the meeting. So this meeting is being recorded for public access and archiving in accordance with the New York State Open Meetings Law. It is the practice of CB2 to conduct remote meetings with all committee members' cameras on. Public attendees are also encouraged to speak and leave their cameras on, particularly if you're given the floor to speak. All attendees, please keep your microphone muted when you are not speaking. To maintain an appropriate discussion and voting process, I will make it known when and which topics are open for comment by committee members, board members at large, and the general public. If you have questions that fall outside of public comment time, please type your questions into the chat panel, and we will address them as time permits. You may also email the district office at any time outside of these meetings. We are committed to providing access for all of our neighbors, regardless of physical ability or limitation. If you require accommodation or assistance for full participation, please contact the district office 72 hours before any public meeting. I just want to further note in that regard, we do have folks who regularly attend our meetings, our board and committee members who do not have their full faculties that the rest of us have, and therefore it's extra appreciated if things are pronounced as slowly as possible, and if pictures that are presented on the screen are described in words so that we can make sure everyone understands exactly what we are presenting, approving, and discussing at the meeting. We ask that those speaking or presenting, this is the official language, use plain language, speak at a moderate tone, and frequently ask if you are speaking loud enough. If presenting, read the title of every slide and describe any images on the slide, such as photos, graphs, and charts. We'll now commence our roll call. I'm Brandon Smith. I'm the chair of the committee. Ms. Thurston, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jessica Thurston, secretary of the committee.
Okay. Mr. Varela?
Alejandro Varela, public.
Thank you, Mr. Varela. Mr. Newmark?
Barry Newmark, public member.
Great. Ms. McKnight?
Good evening. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole McKnight. I'm a public member.
Great. Are you a public member, Ms. McKnight? I thought you were a board member.
Well, yeah.
You're a board
Sorry.
member. And you're a member of our committee, so we're happy to have you.
Mhm.
All right, Mr. Andrews was here for, Mr. Andrews, are you on the line?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Do you want to briefly introduce yourself to everybody? Great, we're happy to have you. Ms. Church, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Karen Ann Church, Assistant District Manager of CB2.
Very much. We also appear to be joined by a board member, Mr. John Dew. Mr. Dew, do you want to introduce yourself?
John Dew, board member.
Thank you. We're honored to have you. Great. So I think we've introduced everybody here for the evening. I'm going to make a couple alterations to the agenda before we approve it, but so I guess I'll make a motion that we approve tonight's agenda, but with a couple additional alterations. I understand Hungry Ghost, Fulton Street, the full on-premise liquor license is not going to come tonight, so we'll remove that. And I also see, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, Teomade Yoba, here from the health department, maybe?
Good evening. Yes, Tejimade Ajayoba.
Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us. I would propose that we add her to the beginning of our meeting agenda this evening. So with that, I make the motion. Is there a second? I'll give that to Victor. Sorry, Barry. Okay. I approve. Ms. Thurston, do you approve? Mr. Varela?
Quick question. I have listed in my agenda 7 liquor license applications, none of which seem to be Hungry Ghost. Is that correct? Was it 8 and now it's 7?
Liquor license. Sorry, I'll entertain a discussion. The agenda that I have has 2 full on-premise liquor licenses, Hungry Ghost and Seamore's. We still should have Seamore's this evening. There appear to be 4 renewals.
I see my error. Thank you. And yes, I approve.
Okay. Mr. Newmark?
I approve.
Okay, Ms. McKnight?
I approve.
And Mr. Andrews? Okay, great. Excellent. So with those amendments, I'd like to go ahead with our presentation from the health department about the COVID-19 update that we expect to get this evening. And I want to also mention that one of our committee members, Barry Newmark, has graciously agreed to help us stay up to date on a meeting by meeting basis about statistics and progress with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I want to thank him for that. And Barry, if you have anything to add at the end of the health department presentation, I think maybe you can pick that up there, but we'll work together to make sure that we produce the most information and most valuable presentation possible. So Tejumede, sorry if I keep mispronouncing your name, but you have the floor, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. That's okay. Once again, my name is Tejimade Ajayoba. I'm with the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. I just want to apologize before I get started. I've been having some issues with my computer, so my camera isn't working, and some of the screen grabs that I pulled together for you, I'm unable to access that document. So a part of my presentation will be very word heavy, but what I can do is provide links towards the end just so that you know where to get this information, because the information is updated on a daily basis. So even if I was able to show you those grabs, it would be different by tomorrow. So the first thing that I want to get into is to provide a summary of the cases that we've seen in New York City, and then I'll do a further breakdown by Brooklyn and the Fort Greene area, because I was told that that's the specific area that she wanted covered. So to date, we've had over 620,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19. And for hospitalizations, we've had over 91,000. In terms of deaths, we had over 24,000 confirmed deaths. And although these numbers are high, we are gratefully have been experiencing some declines in terms of our 7-day average. So when it comes to the number of people who have tested positive for new cases, the number of hospitalizations, and also the number of deaths, it has been on a decrease, and this has been on a 4-week rolling average. So that's something that we are definitely thankful for and will continue to monitor. When we speak specifically to Brooklyn, in terms of the amount of cases, there have been 180,204 for hospitalizations, a little over 26,000, and for deaths, 7,414. Specifically in Fort Greene, the total number of cases have been 2,303. And based on the population size, that is 1 out of every 19 people have been diagnosed with COVID-19. For deaths, there have been a total of 66, and that comes out to 1 out of 686 residents in Fort Greene have died. For vaccinations, once again, I'll do a similar breakdown, speaking to New York City specifically, and then to Fort Greene. For the number of total doses that we have administered to date, it is over 2 million. And when we break that down into dose 1 and dose 2, for those people who have received dose 1, it is 1,122,158. And for those who have received dose 2, it is 637,242. Specifically for Fort Greene, for those who have received dose 1, it is 1,803, or 5% of the population. And for dose 2, it is 1,547, or 5% of the population. And these numbers that I just shared with you, they're updated every day at 9:30 a.m. So as mentioned at the end, I will provide this link just so that you could get the most up-to-date information as possible. Now I want to go over some updates that have been announced this past week with regards to vaccinations and the variants that have been spoken of. The president recently announced that each state will receive a total of 14.5 million doses per week. And this is up from what we were initially getting, which is 8.6 million doses per week back in mid-January. And of course, with the recent approval of Johnson & Johnson, the number of doses that we will receive will significantly increase. Excuse me. Also, as of March 1st, the eligibility has expanded for those who are able to get the vaccination, and this includes hotel workers who have direct contact with guests. And under the eligibility group of grocery store workers, those who work in regional food banks, food pantries, and do home delivery of meals will also be eligible for the vaccine. And under the category of restaurant workers, those who are permitted to work in soup kitchens and congregate meal settings, both paid and unpaid workers, will be eligible to receive the vaccine. In terms of the discussion that we've been hearing around the various strains, there is a new homegrown strain that has emerged in New York City, and that is known as B1526. It's currently being classified as a variant of interest. To date, the variant has been found in about 25% of test samples, so that is definitely alarming. And we as a city are going to continue testing thousands of samples so that we can learn more about it and also investigate the public health implications of these variants. As we know, with the UK variant B117, it is highly contagious, and the numbers that we've seen in New York City have grown. Initially, there were 59 cases of this variant, and it has nearly doubled to 116. So we definitely want to be mindful with this new strain and hope to have some more on that within the coming weeks. Excuse me. And now I'm going to share some updates that were just released today by both the mayor and the governor. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine has arrived in New York City. And as we know, it only requires 1 dose and no cold storage. And this is helpful to us, especially when we are thinking about those individuals who are homebound. We've been receiving a lot of requests since the vaccine rolled out for those who are unable to go to a vaccination site. How will they be addressed? And the problem initially with that is that the Moderna and Pfizer vaccinations are very volatile. So they're not something that can be transported from point A to point B. But thankfully with the Johnson & Johnson, we are able to think about how we can do more mobile testing and get to those people who aren't able to actually physically visit a test site. We're expected to receive 164,800 doses of the Johnson & Johnson within our first batch, and many of those doses will be delivered by max vaccination sites at Yankee Stadium and at Javits Center, and these sites will be open 24/7 in that first run. Appointments for this will be open tomorrow, and folks who are interested and eligible, of course, can visit nyc.gov/vaccine. One other thing that I want to note, I'm sure that we've all heard complaints about the very long lines that people have had to wait in when waiting to get their vaccine. We want everyone to be mindful that when you have an appointment for a vaccine, you do not have to show up early. If your appointment is at 3:15, we ask that you show up at 3:15. What some people have been doing is showing up a half an hour early or an hour early, and that is what is contributing to the long lines. So if you show up at your appointment time, it will be fine as long as you have an appointment. That vaccine is put aside for you, you will receive a vaccine. So in an effort to try to shorten the time in line, we are imploring people to please just show up at the time of your vaccine, and that will greatly reduce the amount of time waiting in line to get the vaccine. Excuse me. All right. Now I just want to share some resources with you all, and then I could open the floor for any questions that you may have. And once again, I could provide this in a chat. But 2 numbers that I definitely want to share with you. We've heard a lot about some scams of fraud targeting people, asking for social security information, credit card information. If you are aware of any of this or have been a victim yourself, there is a hotline and an email address that you can reach out to, and that number is 833-VAX-SCAM. That's 833-VAX-SCAM. The email address is stopvaxfraud@health.ny.gov. Once again, stopvaxfraud@health.ny.gov. Another number of importance is for people who have already scheduled an appointment and they may be having an issue with it. Say, for instance, they realize that their second dose appointment was scheduled either too far out or too soon, or they have a question about their eligibility requirements, what's required of them to bring to their appointment. And this number is 833-307-1608. Once again, 833-307-1608. And actually the last thing that I want to end with is that there is work being done specifically targeted to seniors and homebound individuals to make sure that the vaccine gets to them. I'm not sure if you all are aware of a bill that just passed in the city council that was sponsored by Councilmember Traeger, and it basically calls on the start of working towards putting together a plan specifically targeting those populations and making it available for the public to see and ensuring that it's updated on a bi-monthly basis. This is something that we had previously been working on. So it's very helpful and beneficial to all that it is actually in legislative form and that people will be able to get a look at what our planning will be around seniors and homebound individuals. And I will stop there and take any questions.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful information. I appreciate the degree of urgency that you've provided it to us in terms of getting us the most up-to-date stuff. And additionally, I appreciate your efforts to give us some information about Fort Greene. I had seen on a third-party site that the vaccination rate was a little bit lower there than through the rest of our community district, so I was hoping to get some additional information about that. I'll open it to members of the committee. If any member of the committee has any questions for the health department. Ms. McKnight?
Thank you for the presentation. My question is related to the mass testing sites.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. I was thanking you for your presentation. Will the colleges remain open as mass sites for vaccinations? For example, Medgar Evers and York College?
As far as I know, there's been no information saying that they will stop. I know that normally when we do open some sites, they open with a time period already, like at the start to say, okay, we're only going to open this for 7 days, but that hasn't been tied to those locations. And what I can do is, as I get updates on mass vaccination sites and any new sites that we open up, I can forward it to Carol Ann just to ensure that you all have the most updated information.
Okay, that would be helpful. And one other question, do you know if other sites would also be receiving the Johnson & Johnson vaccine?
Yes, the overall goal is to be able to provide the vaccine where people normally go to receive services from any healthcare provider. So as you know, this includes pharmacies, which it is out already, and this will include doctor's office, pretty much trying to make it as convenient for folks as possible. And with the amount of doses that we are set to get, we will most likely be able to open more sites to offer the vaccine. So yes, we will continue to expand.
Okay.
Thank
All
you. Did you have anything else, Ms. McKnight? I'm sorry.
I did, but I'll give other people the opportunity to ask questions.
Okay. Did anyone else on the committee have a question to ask the health department at this time? Mr. Newmark?
Yes, I do. Also, thank you very, very much for that very helpful and very informative presentation. This question may sound a little confrontive, and I don't mean it to be at all, certainly not to you or to the health department. But you brought up the very real concern about people showing up very early ahead of their appointment time, and that people should only show up at their appointment time at these sites. So my question is, if I'm a good citizen and I follow your advice and I show up at 3:15 for my appointment and it's 3:10, how is anybody going to know that in the next 5 minutes I should be called in for my shot when there may be 100 people waiting in front of me? And how would the site handle the response on the part of those 100 people who have been waiting ahead of me?
And thank you for that question. That's a good question that has come up, and we're currently working through that right now, because at each of these vaccination sites, each one is run, even though they're run by the health department and other entities as well, each specific site is run by, I guess you can call it a leader or a team lead. So right now we're trying to streamline the process so that we're all on the same page. One site isn't doing one thing while another site is doing another. I can't speak to the operations as it stands right now because this is something that we're actually in a process of changing. And if I can, I'll include that on the list of things that I'll follow up with Carol Ann on, just so that I can make sure that I give you the most accurate information.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Trish, did you want to add something?
Yes, I'd like to answer Mr. Newmark's question from the point of experience. I got my shot on Sunday, and I thought I was like, I'm getting there early, you know, and I got there, and they actually segment the lines according to time. So the people who were at 12 o'clock, they have their own line, 12:10, and it's in 10-minute segments. And when I got there, I thought to myself, because I had a friend who was coming in an hour behind me, I said, you know, there's so many people here, I should call her and tell her to come on down early. But then when I got into the space, I realized it made no difference. If you came at 12 o'clock for a 12:10 appointment, you went on that line. If you came at 1 o'clock, you had to go to the 1 o'clock line.
Oh, that's really great to hear, Carol Ann. I'm glad that was your experience, and that might be a good methodology for some of the sites perhaps to consider following as the health department moves forward with trying to uniform the process. That's great information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Or member of the board? Mr. Du, do you have any questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
First, I have to thank you for having this presentation and focusing on Fort Greene. Community Board 2 has one set of public housing projects. All of them are in Fort Greene. We have the Fort Greene housing projects, which consists of Farragut, Ingersoll, and Whitman, and we have the Atlantic Towers, which are on Atlantic Avenue and Clermont Street, I believe. As you know, the vaccination rate in communities of color tend to be lower than the society as a whole. We have a consistent focus on the Fort Greene public housing projects, where we also have lots of senior citizens. The Myrtle Avenue Business Improvement runs a food pantry program in which literature regarding the vaccine has been distributed, but we need additional follow-up for the public housing project, Brandon. So I'm just putting that out there so that we can think about how we can get greater access to that community.
Thank you for bringing that up. I know that there was a specific ask towards Farragut houses, and I'll have to get back to you on that. I had information on my computer that I can't access right now, but we have been doing extensive work specifically in NYCHA housing, and there's been teams that have gone out there, outreach teams, to provide information. And when we speak specifically to seniors, there was a program or a rollout that we did where we made robocalls to seniors in NYCHA houses to help them make appointments. So we basically called them, and if the individual pressed 1, then they were automatically hooked up with someone in order to go about scheduling their appointment, because we understand that there is a digital divide. Not everyone has access to internet, and even if they do have access to internet, not everyone is computer savvy. So there are things that we have been doing in NYCHA. Some people have been saying that we're heavily saturated in NYCHA and that we should be also focusing on other parts of the city. But I will get back to you on the specific work that has been done in Farragut houses, and if there are any other specific, like if you want them to focus on CB2 NYCHA developments in in general as opposed to just Farragut, just let me know and I'll try to get that information in terms of community engagement done in that area.
Well, I gave you the 4 developments that are in Fort Greene. Farragut is just one. We also have Ingersoll, Whitman, and the Atlantic Towers.
Okay.
Those 4 developments. Do you have an opportunity to share those residents that did get the vaccine so that we can begin to carve out and focus on those that did not?
Are you talking about the developments that have, or if you're speaking about individuals, no?
I'm just talking about the Fort Greene public housing.
Are you saying like
What I
statistics
can-
on the public house, on the number in the public housing who've gotten the vaccine? Is that what you're asking for, John?
Yes, just on the public housing.
All right,
If
I'll
that
see if
is
we
some-
have that data.
Okay.
That would
I'm
be very
also,
helpful.
no, go ahead, John. I'm sorry to cut you off.
That would be helpful for us to be able to coordinate and focus the energy just on those folks. I don't want to have to repeat work that's already been done.
Okay, I'll add that to my list.
In terms of approach,
Thank you
just
so-
generally, sorry, but thank you, John, for your questions. In terms of approach, just generally, how much of it has been kind of this direct outreach or the robocalls versus partnering with community leaders and having conversations between people who might be able to persuade those who are somewhat reluctant to take the vaccine?
There has been a huge mix. So we have partnered, we have an Office of Faith-Based Initiatives, and we have a weekly call with faith leaders, and we engage those individuals on a weekly basis. We also work directly with CBOs, and we actually have we have doses set aside specifically to work with the CBOs, because we do understand that, you know, the people who are on the ground actually in the communities have the most information. And if we do it from a top-down approach, just focusing on people that the health department feels may be falling through the cracks, we will definitely miss some people. So there are a number of community-based organizations that we work with. They reach out to the people in their communities, help them to make appointments. We also have trainers that are going on where we train community members on how to assist people to make appointments. We also have community conversations, once again, giving community members information on the vaccine, setting up appointments, what to expect after the vaccine. We do mailers, robocalls. We also give a number of presentations on a daily basis. We have weekly calls with community-based organizations. So we're doing a lot to try to make sure that we reach everyone. We also have street teams that are paving, that are pounding the pavement, going into communities, knocking on doors. We're doing a lot, but I'm sure, you're always going to miss something. So if anyone on this call has any thoughts or suggestions on how we can do things better, please definitely share with me and I'll bring it back to our community engagement team.
I would just ask that you add Reverend Mark Taylor to your list of contacts. He is one of the primary pastors around the Farragut houses. He's extremely popular, and he also does a lot of work within the community. I will just also share that I did reach out to Taylor a couple of months ago to try and get entree into the Fort Greene public housing, and there wasn't the kind of responsiveness that I would have expected. So I don't know whether we need to overcome some resistance there also. As we all know, the Black community is a bit more resistant to this type of testing. There is a lot to overcome for certain segments of the community. I believe in Fort Greene we have made some inroads, but clearly there is a lot more that needs to be done. Brandon, thank you so much for paying attention to this. I joined this call specifically for this conversation.
Thank you for sharing that. What I can do, sorry to cut you off, Brandon. What I can do on my part, Carol Ann, I have a long list of things to send you. I can also send you the call information for the faith leaders call, just to ensure that the gentleman that was mentioned is added to the call as well.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you, John, and thank you as well, Tej.
So much, Brandon.
We've been joined by another board member I want to recognize tonight, Miss Carolyn Cumming-Weary. Miss Caroline Hubbard Cumming-Weary. I'm proud that I can pronounce her full name. Do you want to briefly introduce yourself? I think she's on mute, but so maybe we can come back to her. I recall.
Hi,
Oh,
I'm trying to
great.
unmute. I'm sorry.
It's cool. Go ahead. Do you want to just introduce yourself as a board member?
Fine. I'm Carolyn Hubbard Cumming-Weary, a member of the board and a member of the Parks Committee.
Wonderful. Thank you. Ms. McKnight, I remember you had another question you were going to ask. Did you want to go ahead with that?
Sure. As I was listening to John talk about certain communities not being inclined to take the vaccines, I'm wondering, with those churches and CBOs, are they receiving vaccines that are not being used? And I was just curious about that, because I remember someone who did get the vaccine was telling me, due to the fact of how sensitive some of these vaccines are, if we don't use them the same day, we're just disposing them. So I was just trying to get a sense of how successful do you think we have been in New York and that's with the vaccinations.
In terms of the number of vaccinations, especially if you look at a demographic breakdown, it's broken down into white, Latino, and Black. And we're, in terms of New York City and New York State, white is number one, then Latino is number two for vaccinations, and Blacks have the lowest rate in terms of vaccinations. Speaking to address that concern that people may have in terms of getting a vaccine, within the health department, we have an immunization justice work group that specifically works on that. We have a team of people who give presentations and really go into the science of the vaccine, how a vaccine works, a virus, everything, really breaking it down just so that we can provide people with as much information as possible on the vaccine front. With regards to your question about doses getting wasted, within each vial, there were 10 doses. I think that it recently got approved for there to be 14 doses in each vial, and that helps to lessen the amount, lessen the concern around there being a waste of doses at the end of the day, because there are more vaccines in one vial. But initially, that was a huge concern at the end of the shift, because it's true, once you do crack open that vial, it has to be used within a 6-hour period. Anything after 6 hours, then it's just not, it doesn't meet the temperature requirement, and it's of no use to anyone. So at our sites, we have been working to address any type of concern around waste of any vaccine. But as I said, with the increase in the amount of doses per vial, that has greatly helped with that issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brandon, I did have one more issue.
I'll let you raise your other issue, Mr. Duke, but I want to ask if any members of the community have any questions for the health department first, just in case there is anyone who has a question that they'd like to raise. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. So Mr. Du, if you want to go ahead with your other question, please go ahead.
Yeah, so we have this requirement of attaining what's called herd immunity, which is a very large percentage of the population that needs to receive this vaccination. How are we categorizing that herd population? Is it on a citywide basis? Is it on an area basis? How is it broken down into the different subherds so that we could understand where we are and where we need to focus energy, and are we close? Where should we be making this degree of effort? I haven't heard any discussion of how that herd mentality is going to be categorized, attained, and what it means and when you get there.
We're not near anywhere near herd immunity right now. Through herd immunity, that is something that can either develop naturally, like some people develop a resistance naturally, and I'm not sure if you heard early on in the pandemic, people were having herd immunity gatherings or herd immunity festivals to try to force it, and it's not something that can be forced. So the way that we can go about achieving it is with as our bodies build resistance, and of course that would be helpful with the vaccine. There's not enough people who have been vaccinated right now to even have conversations around herd immunity.
Okay, so Mr. Smith, I need you to bring this up at the full board meeting so that the community board can look at this issue as an entire community as opposed to just your committee. This is something that we really need to begin to address on a much wider level. And Ms. Church, I would ask that you promote the implementation of Twitter or Instagram or whatever that general communication vehicle is that we're going to employ. Because we now have, I think, 1,400 people on our email list in a community of 140,000 people. So we're at 1% of communication within our district of our own folks. We need to figure out how to improve that communication. So, Mr. Smith, this is what I would hope we could begin to discuss at the board meeting. Thank you.
I appreciate your perspective on that, Mr. Du. Were there any other questions for the health department from the members of the committee? Or otherwise? Well, thank you very much. And we really appreciate your coming and giving us this information. We'll look forward to hearing more in the future.
You're welcome. Thank you for giving me the time. And I'm just going to include all of the information in one email to Caroline, and then she can share with you all, including the resources that I mentioned earlier in my presentation. I'll also drop that in the email as well.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Brandon, I leave. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Thank you. Our next point on the agenda was to have Mr. Newmark's update, but I can certainly understand, Mr. Newmark, if you like to defer your update, given that we received a pretty conclusive description here from the health department. If you have anything to add, though, I'd be happy to listen now.
Yeah, I'd just like to take a few minutes to highlight, I think, the concerns that I think we all have. I'm not going to go through all the data that I captured from the site, and Caroline will share that site with you. It's easily accessible, and it breaks it down each day with new numbers, which I can attest to because I pulled it together early this morning, and then I went back later out of curiosity, and in fact it had been updated and the numbers were slightly different. So it's really a live site, and it's very worthwhile to use. What I did is I tried to look at the zip codes. It's listed by zip codes. That's as finite as it gets. And I took the zip codes that best describe the neighborhoods that we carry. Some of the zip codes have neighborhoods other than in CD2, so this is not 100% scientific. And as I said, rather than focusing on the details of each of the 5 neighborhoods that I looked at, what I wanted to point out is that the 2 neighborhoods that have the lowest rate of vaccination at this point have the highest rate of diagnosed cases after testing. And I think that that's a remarkable fact that we need to trumpet, to use John's term, around as strong and as loudly as we can for the need for vaccinations to be occurring. One neighborhood in our district has a testing positive rate of under 2.5%. That has the highest rate of vaccinations. And the neighborhood with the highest rate of positive cases is 5.51%, and that has the lowest rate of vaccinations. So Fort Greene is the second highest rate of cases and the second lowest rate of vaccinations. So it's really a very serious problem, and I'm just giving you that analytical piece to underline the importance of us staying vigilant and loud and appropriate and focused to try to help this situation become better for those who are at the most risk. Thank you, Brandon, for giving me a couple of minutes to say that.
Well, thank you, Barry, for bringing that to our attention and sharing and facilitating the sharing of this information. Does anybody have any thoughts on Mr. Newmark's words or Ms. Knight?
Thank you so much for sharing that information, because I was looking for those type of numbers. How does it narrow down to neighborhoods? And you pretty much, well, you didn't read my mind because you already came prepared with that. But I was just wondering, did I miss it, Barry? What was the first neighborhood? You mentioned that Fort Greene was number 2. Did you mention who?
Yes, I didn't mention it.
Okay.
I looked at, I tried to make sure to capture some of the Brooklyn Navy Yard area. And the only way I could do that was go to 11211, which also includes parts of Williamsburg. And that was the area with slightly higher rates of diagnosis than Fort Greene. They were 5.51. Fort Greene is 5.18.
Okay.
And they were the one with the slightly lowest rate of vaccinations. They had a total between first and both shots of 11%, and Fort Greene was the lowest in terms of that. It was 10%.
Okay.
Of the
Thank you.
adult population.
Any other thoughts?
By comparison, Brooklyn Heights, Dumbo, and downtown Brooklyn have a vaccination rate between first and both dosages of 20% of the adult population.
I think these type of updates are good. So
yeah, I'd be
good
happy
if you continue to share them.
I mean, you guys can look at it all along, but as long as Brandon allows me to do so, I'll share it for a few minutes at each of our meetings.
We're going to keep doing this as long as the pandemic keeps going.
I just want to also say it was really Brandon's initiative. I know I spoke a lot about this and about the concerns a few months ago.
I appreciate you.
Brandon turned it into something that's useful.
Thank you, Barry, but I appreciate you putting the information out there and helping us with contextualizing this. Okay, we can pick this up in a little bit later in our meeting further as we're talking about some other things, but I do want to move on to our next presentation. And thank the presenter for being patient. As you know, COVID-19 is a chief concern that we have, but we handle a number of things in our committee, so I want to be conscious of that too. Ms. Amy Sanders has joined us from the Atlantic Avenue Community Construction Liaison, and she's going to provide us an update on Atlantic Avenue infrastructure. Amy, are you with us? And did you want to proceed with your update?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you very much.
If I could just ask, I apologize, Caroline, but I'm having issues trying to share my presentation. Good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Sanders. I am the Community Construction Liaison for Project BED 778A, installation of trunk and distribution water mains on Atlantic Avenue between South Portland and Carlton Avenue on Atlantic. Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes, we can see it. And I would just ask, consistent with my guidance at the beginning of the meeting, to try to describe some of the things that are in the slides as we're going through it so that everybody can understand.
Absolutely. The presentation consists of project data, project description and location, the scope of work sequence, the benefits of the project, working hours during construction, the traffic patterns during construction, community impacts and mitigation, outreach and notifications, and Q&A. So this image obviously shows you a water main bursting. As we all know, the water mains in New York City are very old and need to be renewed, installed, and sewer work as well needs to be done. And that is also part of our project. This slide shows you just some statistics on the data for this project. The project description and a map of the area where the project is being taken place, which I mentioned earlier. This slide just details the scope of work sequence. The preliminary work has already been done. The in-ground work is starting now. Right now, we're working on excavation and utility relocation. The water mains, different sizes of them on the north and south side of Atlantic Avenue have been installed. The next phase would be the sewer replacement, which will be happening in the upcoming months. This picture just depicts the installation of the water main and what is entailed with excavation and how the water main is laid into the ground. The benefits of this project are new roadway, new sidewalks, new water main, new fire hydrants, and sewer replacement. New water main improves water delivery flow to the neighborhood and fire hydrants, and the sewer replacement addresses local flooding and ensures proper water drainage. Our working hours of construction for our contract are 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. This does not include any holidays or weekends. Should we have temporary water shutdowns, they are taking place at 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. Sometimes water shutdowns need to be done during the day as well. However, we do give the community 72 hours and then again 24-hour notifications, emailed and posted. This describes the traffic patterns during the construction. If parking is an issue at our job site, we also issue 72-hour and 24-hour notifications of no parking restrictions. Community impacts and mitigations. Bus stops may be relocated. We do have several on our job site. As of now, we have not relocated any bus stops, but that's not to say in the future for this project that won't happen. Rodent control stations will be installed by a professional control contractor, and individuals with special needs should contact me, the CCL, and the DDC field staff, and we will work directly with those individuals to minimize impacts and inconveniences. This slide shows you how we communicate with the community. We have a project information card that has been made up. The curbside parking and driveway access restriction advisory, which I had mentioned earlier. We send out bi-monthly and quarterly newsletters just to give the community an update as to where we are with the project and what will be happening in the near future. We also send out a weekly bulletin that outlines what will be happening with the next 2 weeks. That is also emailed, and some of those are posted to our distribution list. I am the first point of contact for on-site presence and communications. I'm there to resolve any issues that need to be addressed and any inquiries the community may have. This is my information. If you'd like to take it down and you'd like to be added to my distribution list to receive any of these updates or advisory notifications, please feel free to send me an email or give me a call, and I'll be happy to add you to that list as well if you have any questions regarding our project. Thank you, and wanted to mention that this presentation will be posted on the DDC website soon. So if anybody missed this, access the website, I will send Carol Ann a link, and you'll be able to access it through the DDC website. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sanders. Any questions from members of the committee for Ms. Sanders? Sorry, I gotta wait for everybody's picture to repopulate. I don't see any questions from members of the committee. I did have one question for you. You referenced some rodent control stations, and I think we know whenever we have construction, there's generally a risk that there's going to be the rodent population making acquaintances with us in a greater propensity than otherwise it would have been. Would you have any further detail on what these rodent stations are like, and just so maybe I could get a better understanding about it, we could think about it in context of other construction projects in the future too?
Amy, do you have that question, or do you want
I
to?
don't. I apologize.
Okay, I can answer that question. Hello, my name is Maria Centeno. I'm the Director of Community Outreach and Notification at DDC. Thank you for having us. As for your question with regards to the rodent control, we hire, well, should I say, the contractor has an independent rodent contractor who does a survey, and then there's a separate contractor who does the actual baiting. And so obviously we bait only within our project limits. We normally bait just a typical, usual, black box or hanging of bait, and we would normally put the bait in subsurface areas, catch basins, places where normally we don't bait to control any possible, activity, rodent activity. And that's us being proactive in anticipating that any excavation work may indeed, cause this activity. So we try to be as, and again, all DDC contracts have this measure in place in anticipation of that possibility.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members or members of the public for Ms. Sanders?
Yes, this is John again. Brandon, I'm asking for the impact area. Can that be defined by the blocks that could potentially be impacted with the water shutoff?
Yes, the blocks are South Oxford Street to Carlton Avenue on Atlantic Avenue on the north and south side of the street. So that would be the Atlantic Yard side and then the residents on the north side.
So it doesn't extend down the blocks. It's only those houses that are on Atlantic Avenue proper?
No, not necessarily. We did have some impacts on Carlton Avenue between Atlantic and Fulton. So those residents were notified just to give them a heads up if they would be impacted by, say, a water test shutdown or parking.
Okay, and are there any traffic implications? Are there lane closures on Atlantic Avenue to accommodate this?
Yes. Depending on where the contractor is working at the time, we do have traffic agents out there as well as flaggers that direct the traffic. I believe they're only taking up one lane at a time at one side of Atlantic Avenue at a time.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Ms. Sanders? Ms. Church, did you want to mention something?
So I have one question. When did the project start and how long is it expected to extend?
It started in May and our contract is for 18 months.
May 2020.
May 2020, sorry.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Sanders. And
well, thank you so much.
One more thing.
Oh, one more thing from Ms. Church.
Before they leave, I actually knew the answer to that question, but I asked it because I want to say that they've been in the area now for almost a year, and we've received only one complaint, but we weren't able to get a follow-up on the complaint to have it resolved, so we don't know what happened there. So I just want to say, as far as we know, there seems to be very good project management in terms of informing the residents of the impacts that come with the project.
That's good to hear. And if you want to resend a follow-up email, Amy will get back to you and respond to that particular issue, which we most likely have already resolved it, but we can get back to you on that.
Carolyn, are you speaking about the complaint from Ms. Casanova? Yes. Okay. I did email her back and explain to her there were certain things that some of the residents on Cumberland Street were mentioning regarding the storage area in front of some of the residences. And they mentioned power outage and a few other things which our project does not impact. We don't impact any electrical lines. We're just water. And I did explain that to her in the email and asked her, I also called her to see if she wanted to, speak about it more. And I did not hear back from her after that email.
Okay, I also followed up and I didn't hear back. Presume that whatever the impact was, at the end arose to annoyance.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much once again. Thank you all for coming and for giving us the update. I'm going to move our agenda along to our liquor license review. This evening we have one liquor license, and I believe I saw Mr. Callahan here earlier, which seemed to indicate to me that he might be associated with the one liquor license. This is for Seamores located at 66 Water Street. Mr. Callahan or anyone else, do we have someone here for this application?
Yes, I am here for this application, as is one of the people from Seamore's, Topher. Yeah, you can unmute yourself, Topher.
Hi there, my name is Topher Bertone-Ledford. I'm the general manager of Seamore's here in Dumbo.
Excellent. Thanks for coming, guys. Who's going to be presenting on this?
I will.
Okay. So we'll give you a second, and you can go ahead with your presentation.
Okay. So just to begin, we do have a full on-premise liquor license already. This is just an alteration to the existing license with an additional bar application as well. A while back, a third party was going to take over the basement area of the location, and they were going to license themselves. Well, that never came to fruition. So basically, Seamore wants to just take the basement for itself for additional seating and have the additional bar, which is already built downstairs. So currently, we have 28 tables with 108 seats upstairs, with a bar that holds 11 seats, including the basement with another 10 tables and 42 seats with a bar that holds 9 seats. So the total would be 150 seats. So basically, it's just sitting there doing nothing right now. So, we want to use it as additional seating and an additional bar.
Okay, so nothing is changing about the application from where it was, other than just adding an additional bar. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, and the seating, additional seating in the basement as well.
Okay, so we got an additional bar and additional seating in the basement.
Yes.
Ms. Church, have we had any complaints or concerns expressed by members of the community about this location since, I think it's been about since 2018 or so that you guys have been around?
March, yes, March of 2018.
None received or recorded at the office. Excuse me, Topher, you have the sharing privilege.
I'm sorry, I did not understand that.
Oh. You can share. Oh, who's?
I thought Mr. Callahan was going to be doing the sharing.
I'm sorry, so I sent it to the wrong person. Okay.
No, you know what? I don't have anything to put on the screen. Actually, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Are you able to just share what the hours are? That's what I was going to pull.
Sure, of course. Yes.
Sure.
So the projected hours of operation for this downstairs area would be from 4 to 11 p.m. Daily. That's what we're kind of game planning right now. My restaurant operations upstairs, currently our hours of operation are from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. daily. Obviously, this takes into account, or at this point doesn't take into account, the state limitations. Right now, the state limitations are still 10 p.m.
Okay. Now, if you're changing it to 11 p.m., would that also apply to the upstairs? I assume it's universal if it's an alteration.
Yes, that'll be the whole location.
Okay, thanks.
And it's not, in case there are any concerns about, an additional bar and additional seating, it's an 11 p.m. closing time. So it's not going to be a late night bar, club scene or anything like that.
No, this would be a sports bar. So like the Yankees game ends at 10 o'clock. We're out by 11 o'clock kind of thing. Yeah.
I did notice.
And actually, I don't foresee changing the upstairs hours. The restaurant hours would still be an earlier closing time.
Okay, I did notice that from when you guys came in 2018, you mentioned that all the Seamore's locations were ADA compliant. So I assume that that's the case for this location.
That is correct. Our restaurant is ADA compliant. We have a back patio, like a garden entrance that enters our private dining room. So anybody who has any type of disability of that nature, we have a card access that allows them to enter through the patio garden, which is a straight shot into our restaurant.
Brendan, Alejandro here.
Mr. Varela?
If I could just interject.
Yeah.
Can you hold on for one second, Mr. Callahan? I just want to give the floor to Mr. Varela.
Okay.
Just want to clarify, Mr. Burton, I'm sorry if I didn't get your whole name. I just see Burton Ledford. You said 4 to 11 was the hours for the. It says 11 to 11 on the application. They should be consistent. So I mean, either is fine in this case. They're well within your right, but I believe you said starting at 4, but the application lists 11 a.m.
That there may be an oversight on our behalf in putting that together.
This is why I was going to interject.
Go ahead.
The hour. Sorry about that. The hours that you see, because you have two different sections, because it's all under one license, the hours have to be the same in both spots. So this includes the restaurant hours, which could be an earlier opening upstairs, and then a later opening downstairs. The restaurant may close by 9, but the downstairs will stay to 11. So the hours have to read 11 to 11, 11 to 10. So that's why the hours are all lumped together.
I have one other question. What happens if they're tied at the bottom of the ninth and it's 11 p.m. and we end up going to 16 innings?
My bartenders need their sleep, so we're going to close. I've been a bartender for 15 years, and we're not beholden to our sports teams, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Newmark?
Yes, thank you. I just needed to unmute myself. Alejandro kind of jumped at one of my questions. I'm going to interject, what if it's a Mets game and it starts at 7? I've never seen a baseball game in the modern era get done in 3 hours. So I think, maybe you should have kept that in mind in terms of what you were requesting for your closing time, because you're going to have a lot of angry people wondering what happened. Well, my other question, which is a little more serious, is you mentioned about the entrance for disability through the garden, I think. But what if someone comes in how does someone get from your main floor down to the bar?
We're currently working on that. We're exploring a number of different options in terms of how we can make that more accessible. We have 2 different access points to the space down there, and we're figuring out. The space is going to require a little bit of maintenance before we open, and one of those things is going to be how do we figure out how to gain access for those people.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions for the application? I'll just say, as So Mets fan myself, I found I often don't want to see the end of the game, so it may be a good idea to have the
Well, with
closing early.
Mr. Cohen, things may change. You know,
That's
you
true.
guys got Francisco, and you know.
I did have one question I want to ask. The word, it looks like the word solid is written on the application where it says for outdoor windows and doors, but it doesn't seem like there is an outdoor area for your application. So was there anything meant by that?
Yes, that there are no doors or windows that, French doors or windows that open to the outside to let noise out. All the windows are solid. I guess Mr. Kelly, when he filled out the application, took it as windows that face the outside.
Okay. Makes sense. Any questions from members of the board or the public for this application? Hearing anything? All right. Well, at this point, I'll ask if any of the members of the committee have a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay. Do we have a second? Seconded by Mr. Newmark. Discussion on the motion. I have one point of discussion. Our recently adopted guidelines from last month would classify this as an item that we should focus on just by the number of seats that are in excess of 99 seats. But I particularly don't have any concerns about that. I just wanted to make reference to the fact that we had our guidelines approved for the committee, which are not requiring us to take any action, but really just to make sure we understand the risks that exist for certain kinds of applications. Any other questions or thoughts on this, or we can take a vote?
I'll just share that, I lived in the neighborhood for a long time, and I appreciate, honestly, having something that will stay open a little bit later, because it's nice to have a little more activity on or near the street when walking around. So thanks. I'm glad to see this happening.
We're really happy to be able to put something which we feel is there's not a lot of in this community. I live in Brooklyn Heights, and so just a neighborhood, really like familiar, like good value type of sports bar with quality food at good price points is something that we're excited to be able to offer to the community.
Right. Caroline,
before you leave, Topher, could you please hit stop share on your screen?
Stop share. It's at the bottom.
I don't know where it is on your screen.
Switch audio. Don't mirror my video. Change camera settings. Show myself.
Check yourself in the participant panel.
Okay. Oh, nice.
That might be easiest.
Raise hand. Drag. Mute. Usually I'm pretty good about this stuff, and I don't see a stop share. I see a share at the bottom of share content, but I don't see a stop share.
Okay. Click on that and see if it will tell you to stop sharing. Or click again on your name in the participant panel and change role or assign privilege to me.
No.
Should we, just while we're working that out,
I think I got it. I think I got it.
Yep, there it is.
Thank you.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Great. Yeah. All right. So I think we're ready to take a vote. I vote in favor. Let's see who's next. Mr. Newmark.
In favor.
Ms. Thurston.
In favor.
Mr. Varela.
In favor.
Ms. McKnight.
Approve.
And Mr. Andrews? Mr. Andrews, you're on mute. So if you have any thoughts, now would be the time to vote. And it seems Mr. Andrews is still on mute, but I believe our motion passes. So we'll see if Mr. Andrews will vote at a later point. Great. Thank you very, very much for your presentation. Good luck with your new bar and other changes.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So our next part of the agenda will be renewals. We have 4 renewals this evening. They consist of 63 Flushing Avenue, HNY Ferry, Hull 201, 7981 Hoyt Street, DC5 Group, 190 Dean Street, Arugula, and 10 Clermont Street, Oaxaca. Ms. Church, any concerns expressed about any of those locations by members of the community?
No concerns or complaints were received on those locations.
Thank you. Any members of the committee or community want to speak about any of these renewal applications or have any concerns to raise? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. With that, I will ask if anybody has a motion for the renewals. Ms. McKnight, do we have a second? I believe Ms. Thurston was first. Sorry, Barry. Not your night. But any discussion on the motion? All right. I vote in favor. Mr. Varela?
I vote in favor.
Ms. Thurston?
In favor.
Mr. Newmark?
In favor.
Ms. McKnight?
Approved.
And Mr. Andrews? I think maybe we'll have a similar story with that one. Great. So our renewals are approved. Let's move on to our next part of the agenda tonight. Response to fiscal year 22 budget priorities. Carol Ann, do you want to lead us into this discussion a bit as to what we're looking to accomplish here? And you're on mute, Carol Ann.
Sorry.
That's cool.
I was saying, give me a second to pull it up. I'm a little bit new at this, so it takes me a second to get it going. So this is the response from the city on the budget priorities that we submitted, and it's good to look at because it gives us a sense of what is possible and maybe even how we can revise our questions to hopefully get better answers. I don't know if everyone had a chance to take a look at the document. No. Okay. My computer is being really funky. It's a little slow. Oh, this is not good. I'm sorry. It's not downloading properly.
Generally speaking, Carol Ann, what's our timeline like for this year for fiscal budget priorities and capital expenses and such?
Well, my suggestion is that we begin the review at least next month, only because we have a huge portfolio, so it takes our committee probably longer than most committees to review. And, you know, we have three parts, right? Health, environment, and social services. As a committee, we probably get about 60% of the entries. So I would suggest that we start from next month.
Okay, I think that that would be pretty good. And I saw some aspects of this. I really would like to pick up off of our conversations from September and October to try to make sure that we really do the most to accomplish the things that we discussed in those meetings. Particularly some of the ideas that people put forth were things that we all really believed in and agreed to. So I'd like to further some of those things. But I think maybe if we can, shall we take this as an assignment for next time? And just an FYI to everyone, there's going to be a few assignments for next time because we have some big things that we're hoping to do as a committee, and in addition to our district needs and budget priorities. So there's definitely some things that we can take away from this. But I would encourage a review of this document, and hopefully we can have maybe a bit more of a fuller discussion in April. Does anybody have any thoughts off the bat? Mr. Varela?
First off, I apologize for not having reviewed this for this meeting so that I could say more about it. But every single year when we get this document, I feel just as kind of lost. It's never familiar. I mean, I recognize it, I recognize the format, but suggestions for how to best tackle this, because there are a lot of priorities here. And also, I'm amazed that the number one priority on here is funding for criminal justice, the court. I mean, I don't have an opinion one way or another. I'm just sort of surprised. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah.
You are. We had a whole vote as a community board, and that was honestly one of the most joyous things about my experience here, to look at that and see that it was number one.
I'm very impressed. Very impressed. And surprised.
Any other questions or thoughts on this right now? I think that's definitely something that we can take away, Alejandro, because it's like, how do we best work through this in an easily condensed format? I think that it's a fair question because it's a large document, but at the same time, I think things to think about when you review it are there things in here we think should be deprioritized or increased in priority, and are there things that we where we feel like the agency response needs to be addressed in some capacity related to something that you care about? It's on us to each kind of review this and come back to our meeting with the things that we feel are the most important. But I would also encourage you to go back to the meetings where we discussed some really great priorities from September and October to make sure that we reflect those priorities in the best way possible in here.
And we can comment on any one of these, 28 capital and 25 expense priorities.
Well, we should be focused on the health related items, the health and things that are related to our purview. But I mean, our purview is pretty large, so we have an ambit to reach and touch a number of different things.
I have a question. Hi.
Go ahead.
When I reviewed it, I kind of focused on the areas that Carol Ann I don't know if you did it, Carol Ann, but the email you sent, you had in boxes expenses, and it was number 11, 13, and 14.
Yeah.
And And I looked at that, and because I'm new to this, when I looked at the agency's response, I was kind of wondering what a couple of them, does that mean, like the way that they worded it was kind of like, oh, yeah, that's under our purview. And it came across as if they were saying, well, we're already doing it. I couldn't really make sense of, are they going to take this on? I'll give an example. I think there was one related to, we requested that restaurants use some type of rodent resistant garbage bags. And their answer was very general, like, oh yeah, if we know that people are violating it and it's reported to us, we'll ensure that we will follow the proper procedures, something along those lines. But I don't think that addressed our concern all the way. Is that something that we will look at and give feedback on? Is that what you're describing, Brandon?
Well, I think we need to think if we see something like that where
Yeah,
we need
right
to
there,
have
14.
So let's take a look at 14 for a second, just to
14 capital or expense.
– which page is that on? 24?
14.
Okay.
So yeah, if you look at 14,
Priority 14 is page 5 if it's capital.
yes, you will see it's still jumping.
Could you stop moving it around?
You were there, Carol Ann, but it's still.
No, is it? I think it's 14 on the expense. I'm looking for
14 on the expense. Yes, you were there.
Thank you.
It's,
Yeah.
okay. Page 27. So, or 24. Page 24 is the correct page.
Yeah,
So here's our request. Then, as you will see in the explanation, the last sentence states, restaurant owners and owners of large residential buildings should be encouraged to discard garbage in rodent-proof containers. And then when we look at their response, it goes like rodents go to their properties where they can find a food source. Construction debris on its own is not a cause of rat infestation. DOH-MH responds to every complaint and follows up with properties that fell both for rodents and conditions conducive to rodents, such as garbage and harborage.
So that is a prime example of them not even considering the question and regurgitating probably last year's response. I can say in general that community boards are not usually pleased with the responses that come back from the agencies. And while I think they're beholden to provide better answers, and I'm not saying this is the situation here, we also are beholden to provide specific questions and don't try to put too many things into a question. Not that this is the case here, but you know, in general, because sometimes we do that because the idea is so big and we want to transmit that, but it doesn't work with the city agencies. And we can say to them, what type of answer is this? This has nothing to do with what was asked.
Well, what is being asked?
Well, I guess there's also that, right? That we have to be specific about what we ask.
Right. So if we said,
what
for
you
example,
asking-
if we said, for example, like there are a large number of rodents that are populating on the corner of two streets, that would be something that they might have to give a more specific answer for. I feel like maybe that's one way to think about it.
Well, also this was more comment than a question, I think, as well.
Well, but I think as Ms. McKnight pointed out, the last sentence is a very clear recommendation that came from the community board. Restaurant owners and owners of large residential buildings should be encouraged to discard garbage in rodent-proof containers. That's as clear a recommendation as possible. And instead, they respond to something about construction sites, which we don't even reference in our statement, and then do not respond to our recommendation. So, that's not helpful.
I would
But here's
suggest
the thing.
that
I
the
go
broader
back
point.
to the.
One
I go
second,
back
John.
to the point. here.
Hold on,
One
everybody
second,
stop
John.
for
Yeah.
1 second. Everybody for 1 second. We got
This
to
is-
only
this
do it
is-
one at a time. One at a time. One at a time. All right. Let me hear from Ms. Thurston, then I'll hear from Mr. Harrison.
Thanks, Brandon. I want to stop us from going down the rabbit hole of discussing individual ones right now, because I think that's the task for next month. And Ms. McKnight, just to your question, what you've pointed out is the issue we deal with year over year. So honestly, your new perspective on this will be really valuable. And as you've heard, we want to be as specific as possible. But unfortunately, I always think that we do need to anticipate the lackadaisical response we typically get from agencies as we prioritize issues too. And to Brandon's point, let's look back at our notes from September and October when we're prioritizing things. All of this is up for discussion. So when you review, you can come at it from a totally fresh angle, if that's helpful.
That is very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Mr. Harrison, did you want to add something too? I believe you're on mute, Mr. Harrison.
I don't agree with what's been said so far, because this is the issue.
You're back on mute, Mr. Harrison. We got that you don't agree. Is there something else you want
Okay,
to
so
say?
now I'm off mute. I don't know why I keep going on mute. Now you're on mute. You know, this is a problem with this document for this body year after year, and I totally disagree with what Jessica just said, because, you know, I go back to the issue. If you could scroll down, Carol Ann, or who's ever got control of the screen, to number 14, just, I said, what's the ask? What's the ask there? And who are you asking? You know, I get it that maybe everybody else on the committee doesn't agree with what I'm about to say, but from a city standpoint, these things, we have issues, right? And so we discuss them, and we look at the template, and we grab a thing, and I guess they assign it a number, or I'm not quite sure whether it's the dog wagging the tail wagging the dog, but we come up with a thing. And so the ask here is what? The ask, Barry said, well, the ask is, you know, we've got these restaurants that aren't bagging their stuff correct. Ask. Is that correct, Barry?
Mr. Harrison, I before we get to that point, I think, you know, I don't want to go on a whole deep dive about pest control here at this meeting.
No, this
I mean,
isn't.
but I think for the purpose of understanding it, the ask is about rodent control and producing more rodent-proof containers, and having encouragement for that.
So that's what your interpretation of the ask is. But but my point is not, I don't want to go into a deep dive either. But I took the time before I went to my city job by train today to read every entry in this document. And in many instances, this body, and I'm not blaming this committee, I'm not blaming the board, and I'm not disagreeing with the intent or what anybody has said what's important. But this body continually goes at this document with things like what's in 14. So eventually, like anything with the city, it gets filtered down to a place. And this time, I guess it's Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And if the ask is containerization, right? They're bags, Barry brought up bags and you said containers. That is not under the purview of the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Containers and the containing and the disposal of garbage is under sanitation. That's why sometimes, this is just one example, but that's why sometimes the answers that I guess from the agencies or the offices or the departments that are represented on the right come back with the kind of wacky things they do. because they can put out informational about rats, they can inspect for rats, but they're not going to have a thing to do with handing out bags or containers.
That's not true.
That's not their job. So I think we have to be very well-centered about where we do things.
Okay, so I
It
think
is
in reference to that, I'm just going to ask Ms. Church to weigh in for a second on the process of how these requests get allocated to different agencies, and if there's anything further you wanted to add on that. I'm going to encourage we wrap this discussion up so we can get to the rest of the stuff that we have to talk about this evening. But if there's anything else you wanted to mention here, I would be open to hear it.
So DOH does inspections. They do give out rodent-proof containers, actually. When you're talking specifically rodent control, which I think that's what this item was about, it is the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And often I have seen where when the request isn't allocated to the specific agency, they simply send it along, or they add that to the comment that you have addressed the wrong agency. Here, I think they probably brought an answer from last year when we probably talked about construction sites seem to generate a lot of rodent activity, and so that's what that answer is. That answer has nothing to do with this question number 15, whether or not it was phrased correctly. It doesn't match whatever happens.
Brandon, may I say something?
Sure, you can say something, Mr. Varela.
Very quickly, and again, after all these years, I'm a little embarrassed to have to ask this, but can someone be more specific about what we should do for next week? Is it reprioritizing? Is it pushing back on the comments from the specific agencies? I mean, so number 2, for example, in the expense budget around criminal court, it says the response is the project has already been funded in prior fiscal year and contracts out for let. So should we take that into consideration and strike it and then move something else up? Someone could just tell us what we should have prepared for next week. Next month, my apologies.
Do you want me to take that, Brandon?
Sure, I'd be happy to hear your thoughts on it.
So in terms, if something is already funded and the contract has been, I don't understand final design though. That kind of threw me off in this one. Again, I wonder whether it actually relates to this, but in general, an answer like that, I would suggest leaving it off because it's already funded, and this is a request for funding. You know, you can move it down to something like continuing support is what I would say to do with this. The other part of your question, I'll leave it for Brandon.
Well, in terms of what we should be doing for next month, I think you should be asking yourself, I guess, 3 questions. Should priority be increased for any of the items that are on here from your perspective? Should priority be decreased for any of the items that are on here? And should anything be removed or added in terms of new priorities and priorities that don't make sense for a reason like this, the funding or anything else that we feel like has already been addressed or may not be as high of a priority anymore.
In your opinion, something like this hotly debated rodent number 14 issue, should we, because it seems there's been a misunderstanding or lack of clarification between us and the agency around this issue, should we just deprioritize it, or do we have an opportunity here to rephrase or to restate something?
Oh, I think we definitely have an opportunity to rephrase it. And I think, you know, anyone who feels passionate about 14 and the degree to which we need restaurant owners and residential buildings to increase their their use of rodent-proof containers should come prepared to suggest that in the next meeting in terms of how we can redesign this request to better focus on what are the top priorities here. You know, it's the last sentence, and maybe it should be the first sentence, but I'm not going to make that point right now. I think, you know, it's just the thought process is we should, you know, look to rephrase something if we think that the phrasing is causing the issue.
Carolyn, at next month's meeting, will you be keeping track, for example, of each of our takes on the list, or are you going to be pulling from the minutes of the meeting to be able to reorganize the list? Just wondering how best to bring, you know, sort of our feedback on this document.
Oh, for the past few years, in terms of responding to this document in particular, we would pull from the minutes. But for the past few years, in order to create our portion of the document, we had been using a spreadsheet, and we'll continue doing that this year. And Taya introduced actually polling directly off of the spreadsheet, which also worked to make it easier on a board level. So we'll be using a spreadsheet when it comes to actually aligning the priorities.
So all of these, you know, 51 priorities or whatever it is, exist somewhere in a master document as a spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Because I know we use spreadsheets to create them. We all sort of populated that, but that would be different than this.
Well, there's a master one that created this one, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other thoughts on district needs? Just note we have some other things to address here. Okay, so moving on our agenda, the next step is a discussion of this proposal, which is entitled Planning Together. I don't think we need to take action on this tonight in terms of voting for or against it. And certainly, you know, the board has circulated some materials previously, and there's no official position that anyone has had yet, whether pro or con on this. It's a proposal for redesigning the process of addressing a number of different matters, and ULURP reform is a big concept of it, but there's a environmental and there's an environmental aspect of that which we can consider for our committee. To those of you who've been able to join us, and good evening to you also, Ms. Cobb. It's nice to see you. If there is, has everyone had the opportunity to look through the presentation, and did anybody have any thoughts? I know you may have, Mr. Varela, and you, Ms. Thurston. I've had an opportunity to look through it too. But Mr. Newmark, Ms. McKnight, Ms. Cobb, have you all had an opportunity to look through it yet?
I skimmed through it.
Okay. Great. Does anybody want to offer comments or initial thoughts on it? I know that I see Ms. Thurston is ready to offer some comments. I'll give her the floor.
Sorry, my internet is bad since I'm moving. I'm hotspotting, so I can't tell when I'm visible or not. So I'm sorry about that. I was like, am I cutting out? Anyway, I would just say, yeah, I really encourage everyone to read it and to consider reviewing. We got an email about Intro 2092 as well, which is sort of informed by this, by a lot of the language in this report. And I do think perhaps at our next meeting, if folks are able to read that bill between now and then, that we could consider sending a letter of support. What I will note is that Steve Levin is a sponsor of the bill. So we already have like in-district support from the council member, but anyway, it just could be worth looking into, and it requires city infrastructure in every neighborhood to meet a certain standard for climate resilience. And past that, I'm just really excited to see a full report like this, and think we need more of it. And if there are ways we can elevate some of the takeaways from this report, we don't have social media yet, but perhaps when we do, or we could all just share it in our personal lives, I really encourage us to, because to me, our district can really lead as an example in resilient development and infrastructure. We have the land that requires it, and we also have some of the I don't know the right way to say this. There's flexibility in this district and some areas that could, financial flexibility that could allow us to, I hope one day, have really strict standards for new development in this district, kind of using us as a guinea pig. So anyway, I'm just happy we're discussing the report and look forward to discussing it more.
Is there anyone who didn't read it? I created a little cheat sheet, but you'll still have to read it.
I was on mute, and I'm sorry. I appreciated those thoughts. I was interested in talking a little bit about that bill 2092 also, but I wanted to focus a bit on the planning together thing specifically to see if we have any thoughts on that off the bat, because there's a different concept here where it's sort of reorganizing the process for reviewing different decisions regarding city planning, and it seems to it seems to be changing it, and some people would argue removing certain parties from different places in the order of review. Mr. Varela, did you have something you wanted to add?
Briefly, maybe restate what I said to you and Carol Ann, and I don't know if Jessica was still on the call the other day when we talked briefly about this, but in general, I'm very supportive of a comprehensive and holistic plan, and I think there are a lot of parallels between what this is trying to accomplish and the flaws in the current planning citywide and the community board system in general, and how our community board has worked over the years, in where we take everything piecemeal and we treat each application as if that is the only thing we should be looking at in that moment. Did they dot their I's and cross their T's? And if they did, then we have to approve because they haven't proven, as opposed to thinking about what the cumulative effect is of every single project that we approve. And I believe historically we have been a community board, recent history, my history, that says yes. And, yes, but could you also consider this after we say yes, as opposed to no unless you do this. And in that way, I see that's what I like about this planning together. I'm not endorsing it because I would like to read it in more detail, and I did take into consideration that the landmarks department sent out, sort of a push back against the plan altogether, and felt that it took power out of the local hands of local community, which I don't necessarily agree with. But by and large, the idea of giving a little bit more weight to a holistic approach and to community input, as opposed to us being a rubber stamp as we are with many things. I mean, what's not to love?
Okay. Did others have thoughts? Mr. Newmark, I see you have your
I did attempt to go through it, and I kind of got caught up on that back and forth between what's truth and what's not truth, and whose opinion is correct. And I thought to myself, this is very dense, and that's why I've always stayed out of city government. But the one thing I would say, and it kind of connects to our discussion earlier, which is that I have felt, since I've been lucky enough to be on this committee, that the local community board has so little power and authority, so much less than I thought it had when I first got interested and wanted to become involved. So I don't have a solution or an answer, obviously, as to what the structure should be in terms of decision-making process and recommendation process throughout the entire city. But I look forward to that kind of conversation, and I will make a strong effort to get past the density and read the material more fully between next time and now.
Any other comments from members of the committee? Okay. Well, I thought it was interesting, and I think, like, my own thoughts are, there's something that definitely needs to change, particularly about the ULURP and development process generally across New York City and in this area. I'm not sure, if this is the right plan, but I've read a little bit about it, and that I definitely feel the more community involvement you can get in things, the better the end result will be. And so that's my own personal thought. Mr. Varela, you have a question.
Sorry yeah, no, just a quick one. Didn't Taya send out, I believe it was Taya, but I'm not entirely sure, during a recent hearing on this plan, she was sending out emails periodically, updating a sheet. Does anyone recall that? Keeping sort of notes and lessons learned?
I do, but
Yes.
I looked at it and I didn't see anything more that kind of wrapped up where things were left off. Maybe I missed it, but I was looking for that and I didn't see it.
Um,
Do you have any
She-
more information on that, Carol Ann?
she was listening in on the hearing, and so she was sending out. I was pretty sure I opened up that one to share. She was sending out updates as they were coming in. Oh, I'm sorry. I was pretty sure I had it. I told her I was using it tonight. You want me to send it out later, or you want like to look at it now?
No, if you can send it out.
You could probably send it out. That would be fine. That would be fine.
Mhm.
But this is another thing where I think we should really take a look at and think seriously about where we want to go, particularly from an environmental perspective. There's a plan to have an environmental, a generic environmental statement accompany this, and what role will that have? How will that be good? Will that be bad? Those are the things that we should be thinking about, I think, from our committee's perspective. Okay. On that piece of legislation, Jessica, I appreciate you bringing that up, and I was excited about the thoughts of it as well too. Do you want to give like a brief summary of it for someone who might not know anything about the legislation? And I'd also be interested in your thoughts of whether you think we should have a presentation on it by someone at a point later in the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll also share the link in the chat when my internet cooperates. Yeah, so basically, at a very, very high level, what it's about is, well, a few different environmental organizations are asking for support and are supportive, because what it does is say that any sort of city, I believe it's city owned or operated infrastructure in every neighborhood in our district would have to meet a certain standard for climate resilience, which obviously can be measured in a lot of different ways, but with a particular focus on like stormwater runoff and impacts on our combined sewer system, that sort of thing. I definitely think it would be good to have a presentation, just because even in reading it, I still don't really understand how those different standards are set. Maybe that's just me not understanding it. So, and specifically what how do those standards, are they different? I don't know. Are they different by zone? We have like the 1 through 4 or 5 flood zones, that sort of thing. And what is our input in it over time? Do they change over time? So I think it'd be really interesting to have a presentation on it. I don't know if it could be even maybe Elizabeth or someone from from Steve's office, or someone from one of the sponsors' offices could come give the presentation, if not someone from the city itself.
I think we could think it over and maybe think about it, talk about it in the interim. Any other thoughts on the planning together? Not, we'll proceed to the next part of our meeting.
I would like to say quickly that we should be thinking long term. Obviously, this isn't maybe right now, or it should be, but Finland, about 10 or 15 years ago, passed a law that said that any bill that went through their legislature had to go through at least a a rudimentary health impact analysis or a statement. So, you know, anytime something passes, they would have to consider what are the long-term health benefits to the Finnish people if we pass this bill. Are there any? Maybe not. And I don't know the process. Maybe it's like our, you know, maybe it's like our liquor license. You know, if it meets certain requirements, they don't, you know, they don't have to go through it. But I know that's in our future. It's frustrating to think that in the United States it's probably 20 years away, but it's just, it's common sense. And so as I'm seeing a lot of the environmental impact statement stuff happening, which is health related, at some point we will be considering also these things. And so just putting that out there.
Yeah, no, that's good to think about, and we need to think about that, and the importance of it cannot be underscored. And our children and grandchildren will look back on us and judge us by our actions. So we have to always remember that. All right. Moving ahead, we've got the approval of the minutes from February 3rd, 2021. Sure you all have opportunity to see those minutes and review them, and having authored a portion of them myself, I don't persuade you to vote one way or the other, but does anyone wish to make a motion to approve these minutes?
I'll make a motion and just thank you again, Brandon, for taking over when I had to dip out.
No worries, thank you. And I've got Mr. Harrison for a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, I think the wrong month is at the beginning of the minutes.
Okay. We'll take a look at the month. Ms. Cobb, was there something you wanted to mention? I saw you had your hand raised. Okay. Ms. Cobb has indicated that that was an error. But nice to see you regardless. Any other discussion on the motion about the minutes, edits, corrections, thoughts? Okie dokie. I vote in favor. Mr. Newmark, how do you vote?
I vote in favor.
Ms. McKnight?
In favor.
Ms. Thurston?
In favor.
Mr. Varela?
Abstain.
Okay. Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
And Ms. Cobb?
In favor.
Okay. And Mr. Andrews?
In favor.
And Mr. Andrews, were you in favor of the renewal and the liquor license earlier?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. We can mark you down for that. Thank you very much for that. All right. Now we're going to move ahead to the chairperson's report. A couple of things that I want to note on the chairperson's report tonight. I'll try not to take too much time, but I have a few things I want to get to. The borough president's office had circulated an event for, I believe, Friday of this week, which I sent to everybody on the committee. It is a citywide legislative breakfast, March 5th, 2021, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So it'll be this Friday. I guess there'll be some discussion of the budget there, parents, government, elected officials. It should be a great event, but I did share that with folks on the committee, and we can take note of it. I want to really make one point for you, for a third piece of homework for next time. We worked hard on putting these questions together for the Department of Homeless Services, and they got back to us. They answered our questions. I don't know if they did a great job or a bad job. You may agree or disagree on certain questions in there. But I really want to encourage you to read those answers, because we got detailed answers, I think, on our questions. And particularly when it comes to our district needs statement, you know, these are things that we can think about, you know, asks for Department of Homeless Services for the future. And, you know, better addressing things that, you know, childhood education for people in shelters, what their view of the number of homeless people, is it increasing or decreasing? They address all these points in our questions. So the people in hotels, how do we feel about how they address that? I want to discuss that at the next meeting, but I want everybody to be on notice about this and to really think about what we can do to make the homeless situation better in our community district, because it's a critical aspect of our function. Thirdly, there is a idea project that that seems to be arising, in which nobody seems to be opposed to, but I want to get I guess everybody's feeling and agreement to, so I guess we should probably take a vote on it, about the idea of doing a partnership with the Youth Education Cultural Affairs Committee on the subject of childhood asthma, involving the doctor who presented to us from NYU Langone here locally, partnering with District 13 and 15 to share education on the subject, and work with the school to better make sure that awareness is spread about childhood asthma. You may recall this is one of the major concerns from the community health profile from the Department of Health. And I had a conversation with the chair of the committee, Betty Feibush, and she mentioned that this has been raised at their committee and that people seem generally in favor for it. The youth committee is going to have their next meeting on March 24th, which is a little bit later in this month. I want to really encourage people from this committee to come to that committee meeting, particularly if you are supportive of this issue on childhood asthma, because we have an opportunity there to make the discussion a little bit more fulsome and show that we're a committee that's committed to this. I think we've seen in the past, sometimes we have joint committee meetings and sometimes people from other committees come and it's just like two people. It would be great if we could have a lot of people or a good collection of you all to join that youth meeting and show our interest and support. So I want to implore you to do that, but I also wanted to get your idea for a motion, which I will raise, about that our committee support engaging in a project to connect the NYU Langone doctor, who indicated that he was willing to do this, with District 13 and 15 officials in order to provide educational services about childhood asthma. So that's my motion. Does anybody have a second? Second from Ms. Thurston. Discussion on the motion.
Hi, Brandon. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. So we're not dictating what type of services he's going to offer, because I remember at one point there was an idea about something with pillows or something to cover the mattresses of children with asthma. We're not indicating what should be educated or what should be provided. We're just making sure that that communication or that relationship is developed.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think, to answer you truthfully, yes, we're not dictating the message here, and we're not, stepping into the doctor's place in that regard either. I think what we're doing is we're agreeing as a committee to help connect folks from District 13 and 15, if they're willing to, with the doctor, so that there can be a information and education presented generally from his background on childhood asthma, preventative steps that can be taken, and things that will and ways that people can reduce their risk and ultimately the effects of having childhood asthma. Any other thoughts or or questions on this? Okie dokie. Well, I vote in favor. Mr. Varela, how do you vote?
Sorry, I vote in favor.
Okay. Ms.
In
Cobb?
favor.
Oh, Mr. Andrews is in favor. Ms. Cobb?
Favor.
She's in favor. Okay. Mr. Harrison? Mr. Harrison, you appear to be on mute.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
Okay. Great. Ms. Thurston?
Yes, in favor.
Hey, Mr. Newmark?
In favor.
Okay, and Ms. McKnight?
Yes.
Great. Thank you all very much, and exciting that we're going to be embarking on a good project. The final thing I want to mention in my chair's report this evening is that next month, hopefully we'll be on Zoom. You know, fingers crossed, you know, that maybe that will be the possibility. And we're going to show a video. We're going to show a video of about premature delivery of infants impacting the African American community in a very disproportionate manner, along with some scientific data that backs that up. And we're gonna share some information about it before the meeting. Encourage you to view the video in advance, but also show it at the meeting. At least that's the plan for now. You know, we all have to work with technology and how it doesn't always allow us to do all that we want to do, but that's the plan. I want to mention this from the one hand to encourage you to watch the video. I know we're asking a lot for the next meeting, but we're going to have a really robust next meeting if we do all of these things, I promise you. Two, if there's anything that makes you feel uncomfortable with the idea of this video, or with the subject of premature birth, or its effects on the African American community, I would encourage you to drop a line to the board office or myself, you know, whoever you feel comfortable reaching out to, because I want to make sure nobody feels uncomfortable watching the video. Thirdly, finally, I just want to thank Mr. Varela for bringing it to our attention, and hopefully this can be the beginning of some really great education and discussion, because there will be questions that accompany this video, and we'll be able to address them in a discussion format. Ms. McKnight, did you have something you wanted to ask or add on that?
Yes, I just want to ask Alejandro, is that a part of the series of videos that you sent us? Okay, so I saw it already. Thanks.
Amazing. Great. Alejandro, is there anything you would add to my statement about that, or that you would want to message about it?
Just quickly, thank you for bringing it up. Thank you for making space to have these conversations. I was going to ask if maybe the meeting was a bit loaded for next time around and you wanted to postpone, but it sounds like you want to go ahead, and I'm here for it. So no worries. But I'm also open to doing it later if you find that the agenda gets a bit crowded. And generally the questions, which as Brandon said, will be sent ahead of time, are really, it's not just a public health conversation. It's really thinking about what we can do with the information and what we learned in that video, and apply it to our mission here, you know, what we do month in and month out. And I believe there are ways, and so I'm hoping that it'll lead to a nice conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know that it seems like there's a lot of stuff that we're going to have on the agenda, but this is a really important discussion. It's something that we need to prioritize and talk about. And you know, we're just lucky we have so many great things that we can focus on as a committee. So hopefully we'll come prepared, and we'll all do what we need to do to be ready to discuss these things in full. You know, I don't want to give any of them short shrift, but you know, we'll have to make time, and we'll take a look at the liquor license agenda. And if we have to defer something, you know, we could defer the homeless services questions maybe, but you know, that's a part of the district needs, so we'll have to pick it up in short order anyway. Okay, well, that concludes my chair's report for the evening, and I'm going to move on to other business. Do we have other business, anyone that you would like to raise? Mr. Varela.
I see Carol Ann, or I saw her.
Okay, I did not see Ms. Church. Ms. Church, did you want to speak? You're on mute. Oh yes, you've reminded me of something. I just had an epiphany, and it has come into my mind that the New York City Heroes Act is something that was raised to our attention to consider for potentially whether we would want to support this bill. Let me see if I can get a good. So this is a state law. It's it's entitled the New York Hero Act, S1034, Assembly 2681. This has passed the Senate, so I think that that's the case. So it should just be awaiting the governor's signature.
Well, aren't they calling on the assembly now? They're trying to get assembly support.
Oh, I guess I haven't fully
they're looking for
recognized
folks
that.
to push their assembly members to support it.
Yes, I see that now in the description. It will create permanent workplace health and safety protections to reduce the spread of COVID-19 and other infectious and occupational diseases. Indeed, this act will create enforceable standards covering face masks, PPE, social distancing, hand hygiene, disinfection, engineering controls to improve ventilation. It would also allow workers to create joint employee-employer health and safety committees to have a voice in creating safe workplaces. So, there are a number of aspects of this. To what extent do folks feel familiar enough with this bill, or that maybe we want to get a little bit more familiar? We don't have to take a vote to support it, but if there's enthusiasm from the committee, you know, I'm open to considering it. I didn't see anything about when this is going to be coming up in the assembly. So but personally, I think it seems like pretty sensible ideas. I think, you know, I would probably be supportive of this bill. But I might need a little bit more time to read into it. Any other thoughts on the HERO Act, or what we might want to do? Mr. Newmark?
Thank you. Yeah, I would just add, if anyone, when and if anyone does feel as though they are feeling very positive about the bill, I just urge them to send a letter. There's a link on the email that we received, or giving a call to our local assembly member and urging them to consider passing the legislation, irregardless of what we decide to do as a committee and what the board ultimately would decide to do as a board.
Okay.
Thank you, Brandon.
Any other thoughts on the HERO Act, or any other business? Mr. Harrison?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. So this is one I didn't read word for word, but I did skim it. And what it seems to be, it's wanting to put into law things that are recommended now. So essentially, it would move the needle forward rather than what is asked of social distancing and wearing masks and taking certain protocols for businesses, right, for cleanliness. It would require it. There's pluses and minuses to that because that's kind of invasive, but it's for a very good thing. So I'm in favor of it because it's kind of a no-brainer. If people want to live, they should follow the recommendations, whether they come from the CDC or the state of New York's Department of Health or the city Department of Health. And so to require it is just the next step. It's like the next level.
Any other thoughts?
I agree with John. Typically, I'm wary of things that are labeled hero and patriot and all that stuff because they're used to obfuscate something that's maybe not as genuine as they proclaim to be, or as, I don't know, as vocabulary fails me. But this one, which I skimmed, just seems, as John said, to be pretty common sense and would protect health a lot of frontline workers.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments, or anyone want to raise anything else on the HERO Act? Because otherwise, we can certainly take it up, like many things, next month.
Are they looking for a letter of support from the board, or what?
I believe they are looking for a letter of support from the board.
I would move that this board sends such a letter.
Okay, so you've made a motion. Is there a second on Mr. Harrison's motion? Mr. Newmark seconds Mr. Harrison's motion. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion on the motion, we can take a vote. Mr. Harrison, how do you vote?
In favor.
Mr. Newmark?
In favor.
Mr. Varela?
In favor?
In
Ms.
favor.
McKnight?
Abstaining.
McKnight abstains. Ms. Thurston?
In favor.
Ms. Cobb?
In favor.
I vote in favor.
In favor.
I got you, Victor. We got you.
Roger.
Thank you. All right, great. So we've voted to support this piece of legislation. We will not pick this up next month then. Thank you all. Any other business to raise during the other business section? Mr. Varela, you have a piece of other business.
Yeah, very quickly. I appreciate that I'm talking a lot, and I apologize in advance. Maybe I'll just skip the next meeting so that I can balance. No, I'm kidding. Two things I want to say is that the issue of homelessness, which is germane to our committee's purview and has come up repeatedly, I think a major part that's missing from the conversation may be the voices of people who have been homeless or houseless. And I would like to see if down the road we can try and put together some sort of presentation from either Picture the Homeless or Coalition for the Homeless. It strikes me that there isn't that much ambiguity around what are some interventions to bring people out of homelessness, namely permanent housing. And a lot of the conversations are like, oh, well, what should we do? And let's fund more shelters. And I think community-led organizations can probably put us in the right direction around what are the most effective strategies. Often I feel that we're not hearing that. And although I appreciate the city's responses and those answers, which I read, and I thought they were quite helpful, some were a bit vague. Again, based on our interaction with Department of Homeless Services that came to our committee a few years ago, and it was rather contentious. I don't know if folks remember. I know that there are a lot of good people there who are advocating, and that is their job. They feel strongly about this issue, not necessarily advocates, but it was contentious, and I didn't feel like I was necessarily hearing from the voices of the sentiments that I would hear from the people most affected by the issue. So I wonder if there's down the road, if there was something we can do to bring in folks from these organizations to, I don't know, to just educate us on what strategies would be best.
Well, I'd be receptive to that. I think it's great, and I appreciate you looking through the answers from DHS because I had similar thoughts upon reading it. And I would really encourage everybody else to read those answers as well too, because I think they're a starting point for directions we could go. One of which would be to have future presentations like what Alejandro is suggesting, and also to think about our district needs and how we can translate them into more decipherable actions that represent what we want for the betterment of our community.
I would just like to repeat. I would just want to repeat that if this goes forward and we have these conversations, that I really want to circle the community-led part of it. There are organizations that are led by homeless people, formerly homeless. Some use the term undomiciled. I don't actually know which is more respectful or accurate. More reason to have these groups come and present to us, because I know we have had groups like Canva and other places that work around homeless issues, but it's a different vibe, a different feeling when it's services being provided as opposed to a community-led effort.
I get that, and I think we'll keep that in mind with where we're going. Any other thoughts for other business? We do have some folks here for community forum, so I want to move to that quickly. Mr. Vinicombe, we'll get to you in just a second when we do community forum, but no other business from the community, from the committee? Okay. Community forum. All right. Given the hour, John, I'll take your question, but can I allow Mr. Vinicombe to raise his point? He was here before, and I saw he had his hand raised.
It's okay. I'll let John talk. It's okay. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Bill. So I'm just what's on the agenda for next month. It looks like it's more than a full plate, which is one reason why I was suggesting if that other item was the outcome that was wished for was a letter of support, that we sort of remove that from the plate, which we did. But I think we have three major things. Is that right, Brandon?
Well, I think if you want to think about things to think about for next month, the video on premature infant birth is number one. The discussion of the statement of district needs and budget priorities is certainly another thing that will be coming up for next month. We will continue to have another discussion on planning together, and we will also have a discussion on the Department of Homeless Services answers, which may or may not dovetail into our discussion of the statement of district needs. And
so it's 4. Oh, maybe 5.
There may be many things, but you know what? I will tell you this. We will do our best to come up with an agenda that is respectful of everyone's time and disseminate it in a reasonable amount of time before the meeting. I hear your point. I get it. At the same time, we want to try to get through as much stuff as we can and do the best for the community that we have. And we also don't know what the liquor license slate is going to be like. So we'll keep that in mind. I appreciate you raising the concern about it. Mr. Vinicombe?
Yeah, just some information to share. I know you're aware of the population of the Aloft and the Indigo on Duffield Street. There's a women's shelter and a men's shelter and 2 hotels there, and We've been having some issues at St. Boniface with specifically around like the 12:10 mass, you know, and with things going on, people coming into the church, and it's getting a little hard to maintain, and so we're aware of a lot that's going on there, and the church is kind of stepping up and looking to maybe do working with the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership and with some of the agencies and 84th Precinct and the Metro Tech Security to try to maybe come up with a community advisory group that kind of looks at this issue. A little bit of background: we had a population of men at the Tillery Street Hotel back early with the COVID situation. We worked with Homeless Services on that community. We worked with Steve Levin, and that came out to be a very somewhat positive situation. The community, you know, we knew that the men had to have a safe place to be, and we worked along with everybody. They came, and they're not there any longer. But it was kind of a grassroots situation that we worked through. So just to let you know, we have a situation that some days are getting a little bit, you know, people coming in and as you know, the church, there's only been a few people going to the 12:10 mass, and sometimes the priest is alone there with 5 or 6 people, and I don't need anything from the community board tonight. I just want to let you know what we're doing, that we're going to start a group, and we're going to start addressing this. Summertime's coming and springtime's coming, and we understand that the population needs to be served, they need to be safe, and they need to be healthy. And we're going to be looking to work with different agencies and come up with a committee to kind of address this. So if there's anything that maybe once we get going on this, if you want some participation in this, work through some of these issues, but we do see a need, and they are our neighbors. We are a community that we reached out many times with the help of this board. We had a couple of picnics over the last 2 years, and we had a lot of different groups from the neighborhood and some of the agencies, and we had people from the Tillery Street, women from the Tillery Street Shelter. We had people from some of the halfway houses in the neighborhood. So we're all about reaching out to the local community and working with everybody. So we're going to try to peel this back a little bit, keep it very positive. So if there's any input that you'd like to have to this, or any, as a Health and Social Services to be part of this, let me know. But we're going to be working with the different agencies, Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, reaching out to the bit of an advocacy group and advisory group to try to look at this problem and see if we can help it along and be good neighbors.
Mr. Wait, somebody had a comment or thought.
I was just
Ms. Cobb, you can go ahead.
I was going to perhaps recommend when we have our discussion, Mr. Benikoff be a part of it.
I'd be happy to do so.
Did you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you, and I was at the earlier meeting, and I had to jump off because we actually had a council meeting tonight. I'm one of the trustees of the church, and we're not about just barricading ourselves in and putting some security outside and shooing people away. We have a very big coffee hour on Sunday that, of course, has been put aside for a while, where a lot of people come from the community and depend on that for food. We give out food in the back of the church. We have a lot of people coming in looking for food. We're trying to manage that, but it's getting a little bit hard for us to control. But we want to be able to serve everybody. We have a lot of people giving food. We have a lot of people coming in looking for food, looking for money, and we want this to work. We want this to work, and we don't want to just, you know, make it a situation where we're just saying go away. So we know it's a delicate situation. We're there to serve. It's part of our community. They're our neighbors. We understand that we don't see them as outsiders. They're on the block, and we're just trying to do a good job approaching this. We want everybody to be safe and healthy. But we do have an immediate need, because sometimes the priest is alone saying mass, the weekdays are the hard ones. The weekend, we have more people coming around for Sunday Mass, so there's more people there. But during the week, sometimes the priest is there along with 5 or 6 people. And the fact is that we don't want to stop having the Mass during the week. We serve the downtown Brooklyn business community during the week. We've always been the downtown Brooklyn business church in Metro Tech for a lot of people. Whenever we have, Ash Wednesday, Good Friday, the place is packed. I mean, we can't even get enough. So we play an important part, and we want to be continue to do so. So I whatever you can suggest, I have some experience in this. I was the chair of the Health and Social Services Committee many years ago, so I know how this works. But we want to be open, and we want to be welcoming. We want to do the right thing. So any ideas, any way, and you've all been helpful already. I mean, it's when we first had an issue in September, and CB2 was there with us, and also Steve Levin was there with us. The director of homeless services was there with us. We have contacts at the Magnolia's Williams Shelter and the BRC Boulevard Men's Shelter. We had a good experience at Tillery Street. We worked through that, and we just want to make sure this works, and we continue to be good neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Vinicum.
You're welcome.
Ms. Church, you wanted to raise something?
I'll let the committee members go first if anyone else wants to say something. Okay, so thank you so much, Bill, for that. I am on community advisory boards with homeless shelters in the district, and we have a really wonderful one. It's kind of been impacted a little bit by COVID, of which Myrtle Avenue Bid became a member, and they are still in contact with the shelter, and they provide services directly to the shelter, and it's an amazing partnership. Right. I understand this situation is somewhat different, but I just wanted to say that, real-hearted community involvement can resolve so many social issues, and I'd be proud to represent CB2 on this.
That's great.
This board as well, but it doesn't have to be me. But it's just a really great thing, partnership that you're forming out there to resolve this social issue, because pushing it away isn't going to make it go away.
No.
And really, really happy to see that this is happening. It's troublesome, but can only be resolved if we take the time and the effort. Thank you so much.
Good to have you. Some of us have been around a long time. I mean, we had the Bond Street Drop-In Center. I'm sure John remembers that many years ago. And I was part of that. I was part of that advisory board. I also sat on the Tillery Street Women's Shelter Advisory Committee meeting many years ago, and we know how to do this, right? It's an issue, and it's not just about, we don't see it just as a homeless issue. The situation is going to be is that after we get through all this situation that we're in right now with COVID, there's going to be people that are going to need food. They're going to need outreach, and it's not just they maybe have a home, but they're hungry, and we want to be able to be there for them. So it's just part of what we do. The church has a lot of people come from many different communities, but we're a local church. We're Fort Greene, we're Farragut. We're Ingersoll, we're downtown Brooklyn. We're businesses, we're retail. We have it all, and we want it to work, and that's what we're all about. And thank you all for all your help. I mean, you guys get together every month. You hit the issues. You start at 6 o'clock. It's 8:45. I know what you do. I've been there. Walking home at 10 o'clock at night after working all day. But keep up the good work, and I'd be happy. It'd be great to work with you, everybody, on this.
Thank you, Bill. Any other points from for the community forum discussion?
Yeah,
Wait, Mr. Vinicum?
I just want one other point in support of Alejandro. he said that I'd like to hear some discussions, not just about the problem, but what are the interventions? What, on a larger broad, homelessness is for a lot of problems. And so I'd love to have somebody to talk to us about the larger scope and what are some of the interventions to do something about homelessness. Not just, food, shelters, stuff like that. On a larger, broader scale. That was my
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Any other comments or thoughts on this?
No, I'll just make one more. The success of the Tillery Street Hotel has a lot to do with the services that were on site. It wasn't just that they dropped off 150 men and said they were on their own. The neighborhood's concern was those men needed to be served and be safe, and it wasn't fair just drop them off without services. But they did have services there. I think it was the Salvation Army, and they did a pretty good job, and they took care of the community. So it can work,
Thank you. Anyone else have any other comments for community forum? I'm not seeing anything
Brandon?
else. Yes.
Brandon, Mr. Vinicombe has been here in the past for another issue, and I apologize, but it was around maybe a not good neighbor, a business that was making a lot of noise. Am I correct, Mr. Vinicombe?
Yeah, we've had many discussions about the Tillery Hotel.
The Tillery Hotel, that's it.
That's right.
And I just wonder, we haven't heard anything in months, and is that good? Is that a good sign?
Well, the Tillery Hotel is going through a bankruptcy, and they had made an announcement that they were going to go with basically market rent housing instead of the hotel. But recently, we've understand that there may be a situation where a hotel is coming back, so we really don't know what's going on there. So, it's been quiet, but it's also been bankrupt. So,
yeah, there's a whole discussion about this issue, Alejandro, and I'll be happy to fill you in on some additional details at your leisure. But I want to, I guess, maybe just see if there's anybody else who has any comments for community forum.
But I want to commend the chair, Chair Smith, because in the last time I was on here regarding another liquor license renewal, you had suggested some things that I thought were really positive about how to approach liquor license in the future. So I thank you for that. I believe that some of the input on a Tillery Street Hotel has helped you put some parameters around that. But I really want to thank you for that you're taking things that from that you seem to be incorporating into some of your approach in the future. So I thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vinicombe. Thank you for coming, and appreciate you coming to our committee and being supportive of your community too. All right. Any other comments on community forum, or I could entertain a motion to adjourn from anyone also.
I move to adjourn.
Second. Ms. Cobb, we got the second. Okay, great. Is everybody in favor of adjourning?
There's someone on there that hasn't spoken.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Shahab. Before we leave, did you have anything you would like to bring to our attention?
Hi, everyone. I'm actually, this is my first time joining one of these. No, you're fine. No worries. Joining one of these specific board meetings. I just moved to the Clinton Hill area, and I'm really interested in getting more involved. So it's been really just a good learning experience to kind of be in touch, and hopefully next time I'll have some talking points as well. But thank you for letting me be part of this, and hope to, continue to get more involved.
Great to have you.
Yeah, we encourage you to attend more of our meetings. Thank you very much for coming. Okay, I believe we've all voted in favor of adjourning, so I'm going to say that we've adjourned. Let's all have a nice month, and I'll see some of you in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Goodbye.
Okay.
Next Wednesday. Good night.
Bye, Carol Ann.
Bye.
How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. Nice
Yeah,
to see you.
just tired.
Yeah. I hear
Bye.
you. It's a long day.
Yep,
Okay. Well, sleep well.
I will. Thank you.